right, at 7 o'clock, we have a quorum of council, and I will call tonight's city council meeting to order. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Here.
Councilmember Munson,
Here.
Councilmember Byström,
Here.
Councilmember Valento,
Here.
and Mayor Bain.
Here. I'd like to invite everybody to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Staff will display a flag, and if you'd like to shut off your camera in your Zoom tray before we do that, you can do in the bottom left of your Zoom tray. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as written.
A second.
Motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second from Councilmember Munson. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
and Mayor Bain.
Aye. Agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. We do hold open forum at all of our city meetings, and feedback is always welcome. It is any stakeholder's opportunity to speak to council on any topic of their choosing. Karen, do we have any attendees for open forum this evening or any written submission?
This week I don't have anyone. There's nobody waiting, and I didn't receive any emails from anyone.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda this evening. A short consent agenda this evening. We have items 6A through 6D for council consideration. I will entertain a motion to approve or any changes.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A and D and pull items B and C.
We will motion to approve A and D as in dog, removing B as in boy and C. Is there a
Yes.
second?
I'll second it, Mara.
We have a motion from Councilmember Munson and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Consent agenda items approved. Moving on from the consent agenda to the regular agenda is item 6B, which is the minutes from the March 8th regular council meeting. Councilmember Munson.
I just,
Want to abstain, right?
yeah.
Okay, with that, Mara, if that's the case, then I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda items 6B and 6C.
There's a motion to approve B and C,
I'll second.
and our second from Councilmember Byström. And any discussion? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Abstain.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye. Items 6B and 6C are approved. And moving on to item 7A, we have resolution 03222102, which is a donation for both police and fire use. Chief Peterson and Chief Newman, we did not discuss this before. Which one of you would like to walk through this resolution?
I could walk through it. This is Rick.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, before you have a resolution accepting a donation from Russell Clymer in the amount of $100 to both the police department and the fire department. Both Chief Al Newman and myself would like to thank Mr. Russell Clymer for his generous donation.
Thank you, Chief. I would move that we approve the resolution 03222102 in gratitude. Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
We'll take Councilmember Munson and Karen. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, motion approved. We'll move on to item 7B, which is resolution 03222103, which is the 2021 business license fee waiver fund transfer. And Dan is going to walk us through this.
Mayor, members of the council, before you tonight is resolution 03-22-21-03, which is a resolution that authorizes the fund transfer from the EDA fund, Fund 212, to the general fund for the business license fee waivers. I should be noted that the EDA did meet this evening and passed a resolution in support of this transfer. So the EDA is aware of this transfer being requested tonight on the council agenda. They did meet and pass a resolution of support in support of approving this resolution. The reason why this resolution is here is, if you recall, back in the end of 2020, the city council met and passed resolution 1214-20-03, which waived the license fees for certain license types within the city of Forest Lake, primarily on-sale liquor licenses, massage therapist license, and massage location licenses. As part of that fee waiver, the EDA agreed to use their fund balance to reimburse the general fund for the revenues that would be lost due to the fee waiver. That transfer was to take place after March 1st, which is after our renewals would have been completed for 2021. Based on those parameters, the amount of license revenues that we need to reimburse the general fund for is $45,850. It should be noted that the estimate for this fund transfer was $45,000, so the actuals are in alignment with those original estimates that we had back at the end of 2020. As I stated, the EDA did meet earlier today, passed a resolution of support for this transfer. They are aware that this transfer does reduce their fund balance by that $45,850 and are in support of the transfer. It is a requested action tonight of staff that staff is recommending approval of resolution 03-22-21-03, which would then authorize the fund transfer $45,850 to reimburse the general fund for the waived fees for 2021. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have regarding the resolution or the transfer.
Thank you, Dan. Council, what questions might you have this evening, or any discussion points?
Mara, I don't have a
Councilmember
question. It's just a comment that, we've discussed this several different times, and I think it's much appreciated, and I certainly support it, and I think most of the community supports it also. So just a comment on my part.
Thank you, Councilmember Husnick. I would agree. We have fund balance in the EDA for a rainy day, and this has definitely met that criteria. So happy to support this evening.
I would echo the sentiments of both of you. It was just great to have a little opportunity to provide some relief, over this last year to, I think, some of the businesses that were hit the hardest. So grateful to the EDA for their willingness to, transfer those funds so we didn't have to take a hit to our fund balance. And so with that, I'd make a motion to adopt resolution 03-22-21-03 as outlined by Dan Undum.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And we have a motion from Councilmember Byström and a second from Councilmember Valento. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Munson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
and Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion approved. Next item this evening is the joint powers agreement with the St. Paul Police Department. Chief Peterson, I believe you're going to walk us through this, and you are joined this evening with Jared Smith. Jared, thank you for being here. And Chief, take us away.
All right. So what I have before you today is a mutual aid agreement between the city of Forest Lake and the city of St. Paul, more specifically between the St. Paul Police Department and the Forest Lake Police Department. Now, mutual aid agreements aren't new to law enforcement agencies, but it was not too long ago that a mutual aid between law enforcement agencies was done and approved through just a handshake. The Forest Lake Police Department for years has assisted our neighboring jurisdictions and law enforcement agencies with aid when we are called upon or if we request aid. These types of aid have included tornadoes, motor vehicle crashes, medicals, barricaded subjects, or school emergencies when there's a suspicious person or a violent offender entering or near our schools. As we are aware, times have changed in the past few decades, and especially the last couple of years. Minnesota state statute already allows for mutual aid between cities and counties, but generally for emergencies, they do not include terms and conditions for that mutual aid. With this, cities are starting to reevaluate the need for mutual aid agreements between cities in order to assist with unknown emergencies that can pop up at any given time, and additional resources are needed immediately and can't be delayed. The city of St. Paul recognized the importance of potential mutual aid between themselves and their surrounding counties and cities. And the city of St. Paul has approved the mutual aid agreement that is in your packet. And this mutual aid agreement has already been approved between the city of St. Paul and Washington County, Woodbury, Cottage Grove, Stillwater, Oak Park Heights, and Oakville. The mutual aid agreement has also been reviewed by our retained city attorney, Jared Shepard, and due to a conflict of interest with Levander, Gillen, and Miller, as they also work with the city of St. Paul. So that's why we retained Jared Shepard. Some items that I thought I should bring to your attention in regards to this mutual aid agreement is that it's only between the Forest Lake Police Department and the St. Paul Police Department and does not include public works or fire. There's no membership or fixed cost to participate in this mutual aid agreement. The chief of police, city administrator, or mayor and or their designee can request the assistance of the other agency or city. And the sending party may recall assistance at any given time. This would usually be for an emergency at the other party's jurisdiction or because of a lack of resources available. Let's see if there's anything else here. There's no liability for failure to provide assistance to the other party if it is requested. And lastly, the mutual aid agreement will be in full force and effect from the time all signatures are obtained by both parties and will be in effect through December 31st, 2026. And staff recommendation is for the city council to approve this mutual aid agreement. And attorney Jared Shepard and I are here and available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Council, what questions might we have this evening or discussion items? Chief, if I can, if as I understand it, we respond in a number of potential ways outside of our jurisdiction. One is directly as Forest Lake Police Department, and the second is when we are partnered with Washington County. Can you just talk through with council what those different scenarios are and how that might impact this agreement?
Sure. So to give you a brief overview, we have 3 Forest Lake police officers who are assigned to the Washington County SWAT team. And we have 2 Forest Lake police officers who are assigned to the mobile field force team. Both the county SWAT team and the county mobile field force team have their own mutual aid agreements with our surrounding counties and or cities. They each specifically have their own mutual aid agreements already in place with the city of St. Paul, but they only cover the SWAT team members and the mobile field force members when tasked with their specific special assignments. For example, the SWAT team may be activated to assist with a barricaded violent suspect in another county or city, while the mobile field force team may be activated to assist with protests or an unruly crowd in another county or city. The mutual aid agreement before you tonight is to cover those emergency situations that do not pertain to SWAT response or mobile field force response and are not covered by those SWAT or mobile field force mutual agreements. The mutual aid agreement before you covers other emergencies such as flooding, fire, straight line winds, or tornadoes, where the city may need immediate resources available to us that we do not have, such as additional personnel, additional vehicles, or other specialized equipment to respond to assist one another. So that's what this mutual aid agreement is covering.
Chief, if I can take that one step further, so we may have circumstances where we have Forest Lake police officers responding as part of mobile field force. However, that is covered by our participation agreement with Washington County, not this St. Paul Police Department agreement. Is that right?
That is correct.
So we may respond, it's just through a different agreement that's already in place. I just wanted that clarification.
Yes, yeah, that is true.
Thank you. And it is mutual. This goes both directions. And I think that's also an important point to point out as we're thinking about public safety and reactions or response times. Go ahead, Sam.
The question I have is just, how does it change our liabilities? Or I read part of it, but if Rick could kind of talk about that just a little bit, if we've got our head stuck in a noose a little bit more than we normally do or something. And of course that works both ways, St. Paul and Forest Lake, but Rick, if you don't mind, if you could kind of elaborate on that, I'd sure appreciate it.
Yeah, I might have to reach out to Jared, but I'll try to touch base on this. With the liability, from what I understand, our officers are still covered underneath like our workman's compensation insurance that we have here. If there are any injuries sustained to any of our officers, we're still covering them as a city. And then the same with any personnel vehicles that may be damaged or other equipment. We are still covering those through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust.
What about the liability end? If God forbids that we have to use deadly force or something, does that liability change at all, or does it increase at all? Or
from what I understand, it's still covered through our insurances and liability insurance that we have here on the city and all of our personnel.
Okay, I just want to clarify that everything, the status quo stays is about the same here. So
yeah, that's what I understand. Jared, is there anything you want to add to that?
Sure. Thank you, Chief Peterson. Council member Husnick and Mayor Bain and the rest of the council, thanks for having me. With respect to the liability, I think it's important to note, and this is on page 4, section 9. So the requesting party, so if example, if there's an emergency in Forest Lake, and we ask St. Paul to send personnel, we agree to defend and identify them against any claims brought against them while they're doing work for Forest Lake. And that identification works both ways. So if we send personnel to St. Paul to help them out, they defend and identify us for claims brought for the work of our personnel and helping them. With respect to the tort limits, it's the same as in state statute. The section 9 lays that out. So the tort liability limits are the same as well. And then this may have been somewhat related to your question, council member, but there is a provision going back to what Chief Peterson said at the outset that if we are tied up locally at Forest Lake, we don't have to send our personnel if it would put us in a bind locally. So important to know.
Well, I appreciate the explanation. I did read part of that, but I kind of wanted to get that out to the public explanation here too, but people aren't necessarily reading it. So appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Mara. So thank you.
Council, any other questions you may have on the agreement? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
If no one else wants to, I'll make a motion that we approve the joint powers agreement with the St. Paul Police Department as presented by Rick and others.
I'll second.
There's a motion from Councilmember Husnick and a second by Councilmember Munson. Any further discussion on this item? Not hearing any. I will, Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Monson,
Aye.
Councilmember Byström,
Aye.
Councilmember Valento,
Aye.
Mayor Bain.
Aye, and the motion's approved. Mr. Shepherd, thank you for being here this evening. and your assistance on this matter. You are on mute.
Thank you. Thank you for the council for having me. Take care.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Our next item on the agenda this evening is 7D, the 2021 Castlewood Golf Course Agreement. And Jamie, welcome.
Thank you. So good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Included in your agenda packet tonight is a contract renewal for the operation of Castlewood Golf Course between the City of Forest Lake and Forsome Golf Management Group. We did discuss this contract at a joint workshop with the City Council and the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission on February 16th. The changes discussed during that meeting have been made and are reflected in the contract before you tonight. Our legal team also made some minor changes to our insurance requirements in the contract that just increase the amounts that are in alignment with requirements by the state. The Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission did review this updated contract on March 16th and unanimously recommended City Council approval. So tonight, I'm looking for and seeking approval of this contract between, again, the City of Forest Lake and Forsome Golf Management Group for the operation of Castlewood Golf Course. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jamie. I will say for context, and Jamie may have referenced this too, that this has been a topic of conversation of a workshop and has been before Parks, Lakes, and Trails as well. So if our consideration this evening is brief, it has been previously discussed. I just wanted to set that expectation. Although happy to entertain as broad of a discussion as needed this evening. Council, what questions might you have for Jamie?
Mayor Bain, no question, but just want to thank Jamie and Parks, Lakes, and Trails for their work on this. A year ago, it's just great to see that it was successful. So thank you.
No problem.
Agree. Any other questions or comments? I guess I would happy to see the changes that have been made. We did have a workshop, or we did get some feedback from interested parties, and I see that some of that language has been incorporated into the updated agreement. So thank you for staff for working through that, and also for Forsome for being a good partner and helping us get language that's agreeable. So I'm happy to support this evening.
Mara, that's a comment I'd like to make too. I mean, happy to see this agreement moving forward, and it's been discussed several times, and I think it's a good agreement, and I certainly support it. So.
Excellent.
Mayor Bain, I move approval of the Castlewood Golf Course Management Agreement between the City of Forest Lake and Forsome Golf Management Group, LLC.
And I'll second.
There is a motion from Councilmember Byström and a second from Councilmember Munson. Any further discussion on this item? Not hearing any. And Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Member Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye. Motion's approved. And that concludes our regular agenda this evening. We are going to move into a discussion agenda. Item 8A is our senior center reopening plan. For anyone who's watching tonight, discussion items are items of council workshop topic. We will not be taking any official action this evening. Anything that would require official action will be brought back at a regular city council up above in the section 7 regular agenda. So this evening, senior center reopening plan, happy to talk about this topic. Jackie, I believe you're with us tonight. Are you kicking us off?
Yeah, let me just share my screen here. Make sure I get that going correctly. Okay, is everybody able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've received many calls asking about when the senior center will open. I understand the community is eagerly anticipating its reopening. So using guidance from the state, I'd like to share my recommendations to safely open the Forest Lake Senior Community Center. I'm working on a phased opening plan. There would be one pre-phase and 3 phases. So 4 phases total, and phases 1 through 3 would be where the center is in operation. And all phases would include a mask policy requiring anyone that enters the center to wear a mask. Social distancing would be in place. So we'd need to maintain that 6 foot of safe social distancing. We would have at least one sanitization station, likely multiples. And we would follow guidance from the state on the capacity limits. That would be based upon square footage, which I'm meeting with Dave Floor on Thursday to go over the square footage in the building plans. We'd also require reservations so that we can keep track of how many people are coming in and out, and also to make sure that we don't exceed our capacity limits that we set. We would ask everyone who enters the building to perform a COVID-19 self-check and check in with the front office to verify that they have done that at home before coming to the senior center. Right now we're in pre-phase 1, the current phase, and I'm working on a COVID-19 preparedness plan, which is a document that goes over everything in detail, such as hand washing. It has all the signs that we would put up in the building for guidance, such as COVID-19 symptoms, how to properly wash your hands, where to stand for certain events, things like that. I am meeting with Mary Birkenbreck on Wednesday to go over the activity list for the senior board, or to have her let me know if she has any recommendations and share that with the board so we can get their approval and their input to make sure that they're included. And we would also need to move forward with the board approval and council approval. Education includes letting everyone know, such as volunteers and staff, how to properly sanitize, where the seats should be, how to keep everything safe as far as distancing, and making sure we have check-in at the front so that if there were anyone who had symptoms or did test positive, we would be able to track who was in the building and had contact. The preparation would include hanging all those signs, moving the tables and chairs and placing them where they should not be moved so that we ensure that social distancing. And the communication would be the newsletter, the senior center newsletter, making sure that the community is aware that it will reopen, when it's reopening, and what safety plans we have in place. Phase 1, we have a tentative date of May 10th. We are looking at being open Monday and Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. with activities going on at that time. Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. would be by appointment, and that would be things such as foot care, where it's more of a one-on-one appointment where we would stagger those times to make sure that people aren't in the same room, very up close and personal with someone, and ensuring the social distancing between the guests. The capacity, again, will be limited upon the square footage. And right now, the state recommends that we cannot go over 50% of capacity. I would recommend that during this phase 1 that we drop it down even lower. Now, I don't know what the square footage is right now, but my suggestion to begin with is 10 people at a time per group. And then we would have a concurrent group limit of 2. So there would be 20 people in the building at one time, but they would be within their separate groups. So that would allow for 20 people plus instructors. Phase 2 is, again, Monday through Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 12, and Thursday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. by appointment. The capacity would then bump up to a suggested maybe 15 people per group, and we'd have a concurrent group limit of 3. Now, this is all obviously based upon if our square footage allows that. And we would ask the guests that they stay in their respective area as much as they can. We wouldn't have any food or beverage going on in phase 1 or phase 2. If someone wanted water, we're not going to say no. They can bring water, but we would ask that they keep a safe distance from people while they're drinking water or having a small snack, but we would not serve it. Phase 3, which would be the final phase. The tentative date is July. I don't have an actual date in there. I didn't really know what date to pick for that, and it could move. I mean, as we know, everything is switching as fast as we can pay attention, and it could not be July, it could be August, it could be sooner. But this would be fully open. Monday through Wednesday, activities would happen 9 to 12 p.m. Thursday would still be suggested foot care, which that's that one-on-one with the staggered appointments. And Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. What I have suggested right now is exercise, and that would be by appointment as well. The center would be fully open. We would also allow it to be available for rental by the public. Granted, the public would have to follow some guidelines as far as cleaning when they use the center for their own personal use. And then the birthday luncheons could resume, which I know is very important to the seniors. And then we could get our capacity and group limits up to the maximum allowed, which is the 50% of total capacity that is allowed by the state. And that's what I have for right now. And I don't know how to share my screen. There we go. I think a phased approach is the best way to go about this. More so in the beginning so that we can iron out any kinks to make sure that we're doing things right, that we have a full grasp of sanitizing and making sure that check-in is going well. I've looked at other cities out there. There really isn't a lot for guidance, but there's about 50% of them are open and 50% are closed. And I did run across a few that did phased openings as well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's in the very beginning stages. So it's kind of a broad overview, but we're getting there.
Jackie, thank you for that. Council, questions for Jackie, and I guess maybe just to kind of kick us off here. Have we had any feedback from, I know there's a Senior Center Advisory Board. Have you been able to kind of outline this with them, and what has that feedback been?
They do want to open. The entire board, except for one person, is they want to open, and that one person is leaning towards opening. So that's why I'm having that meeting with Mary on Wednesday, so that I can make sure that she knows what's going on, what I have suggested, and they can go over and give me any recommendations. Now this plan is, phase one is loosely based upon what their hours were when COVID happened, right before they closed. So we're starting from there again and moving back up.
Councilmember Byster.
Two questions, Jackie. Are we consulting with our public health partners at Washington County, about some of the things that you've outlined? They feel like they're a little slower than some other openings that are happening.
Sure.
And the other consideration, I think, is vaccinations. I mean, if we have a large majority of our senior population vaccinated, I would think that we would be able to accelerate, that process or that opening. And I don't disagree with a staged opening. I just feel like fully open in July, especially when we know, what we know about the virus is that it does tend to, especially with us being able to be outdoors and have doors open and ventilate a little better, it seems that it would be, fairly safe to be accelerating beyond July.
Yeah, and these are just recommendations as to where I am right now. Everything's open to be changed. If we feel that it needs to go faster, that's definitely an option. I have not spoke with public health yet, but that's because I'm in the very beginning stages of this. And as far as vaccination goes, that would have to come from the state. The guidance would have to come from the state. I don't know how we would enforce whether or not someone was vaccinated.
Yeah, that's why I suggest maybe engaging our Washington County Public Health partners in conversation about, recommendations. I know they've been really helpful with our schools, in movement in and out of, various.
No, I think that's a great idea. Yeah. It's a great idea. I definitely want to share some of this with the senior board before I take too many steps. I don't want them to feel like I'm moving ahead without their input. But I think that's a great idea, and I will definitely reach out, get that confirmation information and reach out.
So I'll just recognize, especially because it's been a while since we talked about this, this is some change in structure too. And so there's, new staff involved and new structure involved. And so certainly, there's reasons to do a phased approach from a health perspective, but there's also this operating dynamic that I just want to acknowledge that that's where we are. And so I support that we will, that a phased approach for both of those reasons makes sense. I also think it's part of it's getting started in a safe way and seeing what utilization is, what the feedback is, how are we doing as a staff and supporting that, and then gauging as we go, both from a health perspective, but also just from a staff capacity perspective. So
Yes, for
I
sure. Because
recognize
I
there's
wasn't
a lot of moving pieces, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a learning curve for me as well. And then anybody else who comes in, if we get new volunteers or new staff, we'll all be learning together.
I know that they did do an outstanding job before we had to really shut down completely. They absolutely did a wonderful, they were very prudent, really followed kind of the public health guidelines, and really did an outstanding job with the check-in process and the social distancing and encouraging people to stay home and masking and, installed hands-free, hand washing, whatever they are, they were really, really cautious. So
They were, and they kept detailed notes too. So I do have that as well to go over. And again, if we decide to move forward with more than 10 people at first, I'm not tied to that, but I have their list of how many people they were allowing in per month, and that may be where we started.
I know this is a workshop item tonight. Are there, other than kind of broad questions and feedback items, is there anything more specific that you need council to kind of weigh in on this evening? Or is it more of an update and an opportunity to gather feedback?
At this point, it's just an update, an opportunity to gain feedback. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I am working on it. This is my main priority right now, and it's a big one. It's a lot of work, but I think it's going to pan out well.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate those efforts, and I know the users of the Senior Center do as well. Other questions for Jackie this evening? Not seeing any. Appreciate the update, and certainly keep us posted as we move forward, and as you're identifying how are we doing this both safely and with kind of capacity that we have to support.
Will do. Thank you.
Very good. So quick agenda note for this evening. We do have a closed session scheduled at the end of the meeting tonight. However, we will accommodate staff updates next, and then we'll move into council updates after that. And so let's move into the staff update portion of our meeting. Let's start with Patrick and then go to Dan.
Yeah, I just have one item, and we announced this in the EDA committee, is that we are going to extend the outdoor dining allowances like we did last year during the shutdown. We feel that we really don't have guidance on when it's going to be 100%. Plus, I think it's a good tool to allow the businesses to expand their seating, have some outdoor dining. The process will be very similar to what it was last year, just a simple application form, and skip all of the red tape and let them go. Probably we'll through the end of September is what we're envisioning now, and then we'll see how everything stands after that.
Thank you, Patrick. Any questions for Patrick this evening? We'll go on to Dan and Chief Newman after Dan.
Mayor, members of council, I have a quick update on the council technology, the upgrades that we made last year to the council chambers. I want to first of all, thank Paul Peterson for his help on making sure all of this is working. I know he ran it through its first test last Friday, and it seemed to go well from what he told me this morning when we met. I did meet with him again today for about an hour, going through all the different calculations in terms of how do we get different video signals to go, screen sharing, audio, all of that. That's that math involved in making sure that we have a good blended session when we get to that point where we need to go back to a blended in-person and remote setting. So we're starting that work right now. I do have another follow-up meeting with him next week to kind of get the last details ironed out. But so far, all indications are the chambers is now able to handle a both in-person and remote meeting. So I do want to thank Paul for all his help in working through these issues and what a blended setup looks like for the city. So it's forthcoming, but early indicators are everything looks good from the tech standpoint.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan this evening? Seeing none, Chief Newman, and then Chief Peterson.
Okay, Mayor and members of the council, I have a few updates for you tonight. I'll start out with a structure fire that we had this past Friday night at 5:32 p.m. Forest Lake Fire was requested for a structure fire at West Ridge Townhomes on the 800 block of Southwest 12th Street. During the page from Washington County Dispatch, we were informed that there are 2 kids still inside the structure. Forest Lake Police Officer John Glatter was the first to arrive on scene. On the footage from John Glatter's body-worn camera, you can see a young female jumping from the second floor window as Officer Glatter walked up to the structures. Bystanders on scene helped break her fall. She didn't sustain any broken bones or injuries from that. Upon walking up to the structure, Officer Glatter was advised that there was still a second occupant that was trapped in the structure. At that time, Kean Whitler, who lives next door to the residence, and Officer Glatter entered the smoke-filled structure to search for the second occupant. After a quick search, they were able to locate the second occupant on the second floor and quickly brought her to safety. Both females were transported and treated for smoke inhalation, and Officer Glatter and Kean Whitler were evaluated for smoke inhalation on scene. I talked to both the family and Kean Whitler today, and they're all doing fine. When our assistant fire chief, Mike Swenson, arrived, he deployed 2 Stat X first responder aerosol suppression grenades into the structure. At that time, we had a fairly well-involved kitchen fire. The Stat X aerosol grenade, which we have in all of our chief vehicles and our first 2 out engine, basically interrupts the fire process. And once that process is interrupted, the fire can no longer sustain combustion and the fire is suppressed. And so after deploying the 2 Stat X grenades, the front door was closed, and when engine 1 arrived, we advanced a line from the engine into the structure, and we used under 50 gallons of water to put out the fire. So the Stat X grenade was pretty effective, and we've used it in past fires with the same result, where it results in just minimal water flow, which reduces water damage and smoke damage. So they're pretty effective. Automatic mutual aid was provided by Hugo and Wyoming Fire Departments and M Health Ambulance and Forest Lake PD assisted. Any questions on that incident?
No questions, just glad everybody is okay, and thank you to all of the responders that responded.
Great result.
Yeah, Chief, if I understand it, you're doing a review on accommodations like you would do in a major event, is that right?
That's correct.
And you report back to council on that? Is that kind of next step?
That would be the next step. Forest Lake has a awards committee, and so we review all the data and facts from whatever that incident was, and then under the 4 different levels of awards, we determine which award would be applicable in that situation, and then we bring that recommendation back to the city council.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And again, sounds like nice work by everyone. Glad everyone is okay. That's a
Okay,
tough
I
one.
have it.
What, 5:30 in the evening? I mean,
Yep, on a Friday.
wow.
So I have some additional updates. Most of Minnesota now is in burn restrictions. We're dry out, and you're still allowed to have recreational 3x3 fires without a permit. But if you want a permit for a 10x10 fire, you need to request a burn permit, and they can be obtained at City Hall here in Forest Lake and the Columbus City Hall if you're a Columbus resident. And burn restrictions will be on until it greens up. So usually end of April, first part of May. And it's just moisture dependent. The last few or 3 weeks ago, we upgraded our siren report back software. This new software will give us the ability to conduct daily function tests on each siren located in Forest Lake. It'll check battery conditions, and it also has a tamper report back if somebody tampers with any of the equipment. And we know it works because one of the doors opened on siren 9 yesterday in the wind, and we received about 200 emails. Every time the door would open or the door would close, it'd send out an email. So Greg Weiss and myself both receive daily reports on it. And if anything triggers one of the things that checks, they instantly will send out an email. That's all I have for updates.
What else can we put that type of notification on? I can think of all sorts of things that we might want that type of notification on. All kidding aside, any questions for Chief Newman this evening? All right, Chief Peterson, and then Pete and Amanda.
I want to thank Chief Newman for the kind words regarding our officers' response and assistance at the townhome fire. Definitely beyond pleased, everything worked out well and there were no serious injuries to anyone. And I'm very proud of our police officers and our firefighters. I also want to thank all of you city council members for supporting us and providing us with the equipment necessary to do our jobs and to keep our community safe. It's incidents like this that really provides proof how having the right equipment in place assists us in doing our jobs. So thank you very much. And other than that, I don't have any other further updates unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Chief Peterson this evening? Not seeing any. Pete and Amanda.
Evening, Your Honor, Counsel. I don't have any update tonight, but happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions for Pete or Amanda? And we'll go to Ryan after Pete and Amanda. Dave after Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, the only updates I do have is related to the bid opening we had last week for the 2021 local street improvement project. Unbelievable bids what we got on by 2 minutes, and you wouldn't know why with the economy and where things are at. We obviously uniqueness probably to this project is there's quite a bit of lineal work in this year's project versus a lot of the smaller block type of work. But I also found out that Tiller Barton Sand and Gravel, which is commercial asphalt, was bought by a larger company. So I don't know if they've come in and trying to buy some of the market share here, but the low bids are coming out of the commercial plants. So I mean, we'll take that, right? I mean, it's just I haven't seen bituminous pricing like that for years, so it's crazy. And then we do have another bid opening March 30th for the full depth reclamation double chip seal project. Both these projects will come to the April City Council meeting for award. Water treatment plant 2 is under construction. Our substantial completion with that is August of this year. The watershed 60-day comment period is open until April 30th. I am hoping that they do receive some comments on this plan. I did, talk with Washington County and related the comments on the Everton project, and actually we've received very few comments on that project. So if there are any opportunities you guys want to express that weren't able to do within that segment, please send me maybe an email or something that we could forward on to the county. Otherwise, they're going to kind of continue to move forward on the path that they'll support versus, they didn't receive a lot of comments. But going back to the watershed comment period, you guys have been involved in some of their meetings over several years. If there's things you guys don't like within the plan or want to see within the plan, or some potential recommendations or suggestions, this is your opportunity to do so. Otherwise, we live with what they adopt. So Karen sent that link out earlier. Maybe we can send it out again if you guys don't know where that might have gone. But I just really want to highlight those opportunities that are put forth, and really look forward to you guys commenting on that and sharing with other individuals in the community that you might provide valuable input on behalf of the city too. So that's all I got. I'll open up with any questions you guys might have.
Ryan, as it relates to watershed plan, is it appropriate for us to respond as a council? I mean, is there an opportunity for us to provide a more formal feedback structure?
You could certainly do that. They have a pretty well laid out format how they want to receive their comments. So if it was a council body, that would be probably more powerful than an individual.
Right. Is that something that you can help us is there calendar time for us to, in our next workshop item or as a next council meeting, just have a discussion item where we're able to gather some consensus based on a conversation you might guide us through? Is there an opportunity for that?
We can have some draft comments prepared by then, and then have you guys the opportunity to comment or review on them or add to them.
I would welcome that. Especially the watershed in particular gets to be quite technical quickly, and impact to what it means for Forest Lake. I always appreciate your perspectives.
No problem.
Council, are you comfortable with? I'm kind of crafting a path here. Are we comfortable with that?
No, Mayor Bain, that was the direction I was headed. So you took the words.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan. Other questions for Ryan? Not seeing any. Exciting to hear some good bid results. Our 10-year plan needs some positive pricing on those bids, so we like that. All right, Jamie, I'm sorry, Dave, and then Jamie.
Mayor, Council, just one quick update. Compost site will be opening April 3rd, so not this weekend, but the following weekend. Updated dates and times are on the website. I believe Jackie will be putting out a Facebook post as well, try to get the word out. We're also putting a sign up at the front entrance. So the warm weather, we get to start about a week or so early this year. So as long as the weather holds and we don't get a bunch of snow here coming up, we should be good to go. That's all I have.
Perfect. Any questions for Dave? All right, Jamie, you're next.
All right. So,
and then Sandy. Sorry, Jamie. And then Sandy.
No problem. So Mayor and Council, as I mentioned previously, we did a Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission meeting last Tuesday. And one of the agenda items was on the regular agenda was our athletic field fees. And a presentation was shared with the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission. The Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission did table any action at the meeting last Tuesday, just to allow the opportunity for further collaboration and conversation with the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association. We did get a feedback and a proposal last Friday. So just an update that city staff is continuing on next steps in negotiating our fee structure and everything along those lines. So we will revisit our timeline on this and bring this back to council as we continue to navigate next steps. So any questions on that?
Any questions for Jamie on that? I know it's been a lot of work and lots of input involved. So thanks for everybody who's kind of participated and all of the feedback.
No problem. And then I just have one other quick update. Just given some of the recent changes from the state, we are moving forward or tentatively planning our first community event, the Spring Fling, penciled in for May 1st of this year, which is a Saturday from 10 till 1. It'd be similar to our event in 2019, where we have just, can follow social distancing, safety guidelines provided by the state. We didn't see more than 100, 150 people over the course of that time. So feel comfortable with keeping some really, stations spread out. No on-site food, just kind of prepackaged snacks that we can give out and goodies and things like that. So that's penciled in. We're going to start communicating that. Obviously, we'll be subject to change if anything comes up, and then I'll be shortly shifting gears to really start looking at what Arts in the Park this summer is going to look like. So those are all the updates I have for this evening.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jamie. Any questions for Jamie this evening? All right, Sandy and then Jackie.
I have nothing to add tonight unless there's any questions anyone has for me.
Any additional questions for Sandy this evening? All right, and Jackie and then Karen.
Talked about the senior center. That's my main thing going on right now. The compost site graphic is complete and it will go up later this week onto Facebook. And the spring fling flyer draft is complete, and we're having a meeting later this week so I can get some feedback on that. And that's all I have.
Great. Any questions for Jackie this evening? All right, and Karen.
Thanks, Mayor Bain. I don't have any updates tonight.
Any updates or any questions for Karen this evening? All right, I think we've got all staff members. Let's move on to council updates. We'll start with Councilmember Husnick and then Councilmember Byström.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have no other updates except that I attended the EDA meeting just prior to the council meeting where we kind of pushed over to the business license fee waiver onto the council, which we just voted on. So, and I'm sure you will elaborate on more. The EDA, you were there. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Husnick. Councilmember Byström and then Councilmember Munson.
Just a quick shout out to Chief Newman and Chief Peterson and their teams for the swift and skilled action that really could have been tragic, and also to our citizen for their courage as well. I attended the YMCA board meeting. Pretty much a general board meeting, nothing major discussed there. And Jackie covered the Parks, Trails and Lakes Commission meeting quite well, so nothing to add there.
Very good. Councilmember Munson and then Councilmember Valento.
Just a quick update, or actually not really update, but I attended the FLA meeting last week, and it sounds like they are looking forward to closing in on this agreement and moving forward. So that's good to hear.
That is great to hear. And Councilmember Valento.
Last week, I attended a special meeting for the Watershed District, and the board is looking at creating a greenway, a visionary. As of right now, the thoughts are focused on 3 areas: conservation projects, which would include water quality and flood reduction, and recreation. It's still in the beginning stages, so they still have months to work on it, but it sounds super interesting.
Sounds great. And keep us posted, please. That makes progress. Just a couple quick updates from my desk. Attended as I mentioned, the EDA meeting tonight. The other action the council or EDA took this evening was to approve the contract with the downtown planner. So happy to have that moving forward. And as council will recall, that is a joint project cost between the city and through a Washington County CDA grant. So happy to have our Washington County partners available to help us fund that, and happy to see next steps moving forward. Also, there is a Foresight Good Samaritans group that is having a downtown cleanup event on Sunday at noon, and they have entered themselves into a contest to become the cleanest city in America, which is geared around that particular event. So thanks in advance to staff that has provided some support, and we'll just welcome everybody to get out there for a cleanup event. It's a good time for it. All of the snow is melting and all of the stuff from the winter is now showing itself. So let's get that cleaned up for spring. I do not have anything further this evening, and we are going to move into closed session. Council, does somebody have the the script to move us into closed session. And quick logistics before we read that script. I believe we are going to sign off from this Zoom meeting and then move into a second Zoom meeting. Karen, is that correct? And before we move, does everybody have that second Zoom meeting link available? Making sure we don't lose anybody here. All right.
Yep. Mayor Bain, that's correct. And I sent the link out again. If you didn't get it for some reason, let me know right now. I can send it to you again. Make sure everybody gets in the meeting. But yeah,
Perfect.
we'll go to a separate meeting.
Perfect. Would somebody like to move us into closed session?
Mayor Bain, I can do that. I move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, to discuss pending litigation regarding lighthouse lofts and also regarding property PID 16.032.21.14.0064 located in the city of Forest Lake. The closed session will be held in a separate room, a separate online Zoom room, and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion of tonight's City Council meeting in the regular Zoom room here. There being no further items on the agenda, once back in open session, the council will simply adjourn the meeting.
There's a motion to close. Is there
I'll
a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a motion from Councilmember, or a second from Councilmember Husnick. Karen, could we have a roll call to close the meeting, please?
Sorry. Councilmember Husnick.
Aye.
Councilmember Munson.
Aye.
Councilmember Byström.
Aye.
Councilmember Valento.
Aye.
And Mayor Bain.
Aye, and we are in closed session.